Okay, we are live with this week's masterclass. Super excited to have Sonia with us. Okay, we are live with this week's masterclass with the Sales Confidence membership. I am super excited to have Sonia with us. Incredibly excited for this week's masterclass. Can you just let me know when you arrive in the chat that you can see and hear us? Right now I can see Ali, Luke, Tamia. So can you just make me feel a bit more comfortable that you can see and hear me before I do the introduction and hand over? Thank you, Ali. That's kind of you. Notice this bush. I'm in Heathrow Airport right now, and I'm planning to head off to New York this evening. So I've got two events. We've got one for SDR leaders this afternoon. Sonia's going to be speaking again, so she's doubling up today. And I'm just in Heathrow Airport in a lab. So I'm glad that we've got this working. Okay, so just going to let a few more guests arrive. I can see people arriving as we do this, and then I'm going to do the introduction for Sonia, and then I'm going to hand over to Sonia. Can you hear me, Sonia? Okay, yep. Good. All right, you're looking good. Good to see you, Josh. Good to see you, Kevin. All right, I'm going to kick off the introduction, and then I'm going to hand over to Sonia. So this week's session is going to be managed and led by Sonia Gonzalez, who is a seasoned SDR coach through her company, the SDR Coach. Now, to be fair to her, she's got a background in leadership and being an AE. She's just a general high performer, and she's got a great growth mindset. She's been a committed brand ambassador for Sales Confidence, and many of you have met her at our dinners. But she's got over 10 years experience in the SaaS space. And prior to what she's doing now at the SDR Coach, she was leading a company called SaaS Leads and helping SDRs fulfill their sales potential. Her experience, though, spreads across multiple areas, and she's going to be talking about multitasking is a myth, time management tips, the Pomodoro technique that I've never heard of, 4 Ps of time management, Eisenhower decision-making tricks, and prioritizing your accounts and buyer personas. There's a lot of new subject material there for me, so I'm excited about this session and looking forward to you joining. Thanks for all the comments in the chat. Please be nice, and I'll let you crack on.
Perfect. Thank you, James, for the introduction. That was very kind of you. It's always fun to see your own experience from someone else's eyes. But as James mentioned, my name is Sonia Gonzalez Guillonneau. I saw that you didn't dare with the last one, but that's how you pronounce it. I'm the only one on LinkedIn with that name, though, so it does make it quite handy sometimes. At least I don't have a name like John Smith. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can all see it. Please do let me know if you can. James, can you just give me a thumbs up if the comments say that they can see the screen? Perfect. Great. So today we're going to be talking about time management and prioritization, 2 very essential topics to master in sales. Now, we'll say that while today I'm going to be covering some tips and tricks and some tools, they are 2 spaces that you will need to be constantly working on. There we go. So the agenda for today, as James kindly mentioned, will be multitasking is a myth, time management tips, the Pomodoro technique, the 4 Ps of time management, the Eisenhower decision matrix, and then prioritizing your accounts and buyer personas. Quite like this joke that says, my calendar is way overbooked and I'm 3 months behind in my work. I don't have time to attend a time management seminar. But if your calendar is way overbooked and you are 3 months behind in your work, you might absolutely require to attend a time management seminar because it might make your life easier, might streamline your processes, and it might overall deliver better results for you. So we're going to get started with time management. Before I do, is there any questions, anything that anyone wants to get off their chest or wants to share with the rest of the team? And James, feel free to stop me if there is any comments.
Yeah, I'll let you know if there's any comments or questions.
Perfect. So the first thing that we're going to do is going to be a little bit of an exercise that's going to break the ice, hopefully, but also give you some tangible outcomes as to how multitasking can potentially be damaging your day-to-day. So I'm going to ask everyone to get a paper, a pen, and a timer. That could be on your phone or on your laptop. And I'll give you all about 30 seconds to get that. James, if you can do this yourself as well, it would be really useful. And Vitaly, you absolutely should do it too. I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to get pen and paper. And once I've got a green light or a go ahead, we'll get started. This is kind of awkward without being able to see anyone. So I'm going to assume
it's all good. We've got stopwatch and paper ready. Tamia's already saying she's keen on this as she's allergic to multitasking. Luke's ready. Josh is ready. We're all ready.
Perfect. Let's go in that case. So what we're going to do is with that piece of paper and with your pen, you're going to be writing multitasking is a myth, but you're not going to be writing it as simple as that. You're going to start with the M, then you're going to do a 1 next to it. Then you're going to do the U and you're going to do a 2 next to it. Then the L, 3, T, 4, you get the gist. Is that clear to everyone? You're going to do the letter first, then the number associated until you've completed multitasking is a myth. Before you get started, set your time watch and let me know how long that takes you to do. Good luck.
That was impossible.
How long did it take you?
It took me about 30 seconds. I'm still going.
Why are you talking? Talk to me when you finish.
Ali did it in 12.83 seconds. She's obviously a sprinter at multitasking. Josh, circa 20 seconds.
Okay. Now we're going to do it again, but this time around, we're going to write down multitasking is a myth first, and then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of the numbers. See how long that takes you. This time around, it should take less time.
Tim, who's a new member, welcome, Tim. 47 seconds on the first go, 19 seconds on the second. Luke, about 14 seconds quicker.
Was anyone slower the second time
Ali
around?
was slower, if she's being honest. Kevin says he was similar to Tim. Ali was slower.
That's interesting.
Tamia was much faster.
I'd be interested to see Ali's results and how her brain works as well, because Like obviously doing it in the same speed is very impressive. Generally, it does take about 15 seconds on average, quicker the second time round than the first time round. But in some cases, it can even be halved. Some people can do it in about 40 seconds and then about 20 seconds the second time round. And generally, what this shows is that when your brain is going from one task to another, in this case, from letters to numbers, you're doing two things at the same time. It's taking you longer to come up with the answers. The quality of your work is not as good as if you were to focus on just one task, finish it, and then focus on the next one. On average, it takes about 5 minutes for your brain to go from one task into another one, which is why it's so important to take breaks in between big tasks, but also why it's so important to not focus on multiple tasks at the same time, because then you're not utilizing your brain power correctly and you're potentially not generating the same amount of results from the task that you're doing. So I hope that was quite insightful. There are some people out there that can multitask. I have seen it being done, but there's still something to be said about the quality of the work that is being done while multitasking, as if you were just spending that time on one task and getting it done to the best of your standard. So I'm then going to talk about some time management tips. And when it comes to time management tips, there's loads of different tips that are being said right, left and center. What you really need to figure out is what works for you as an individual. There are some tips here that work better for me than others, but there are some tips here that work really well for some other people, right? So it's about figuring out your own processes. It's about figuring out what works for you. We've just seen through this exercise that multitasking is a myth, quite generally. If you're doing a few different things at the same time, you're potentially not doing them to the best of your standard. The second thing that I would say is that prioritizing tasks based on your goals is very essential. If you're an SDR, there are 4 tasks that need to get done every day that are going to generate your results, hopefully, right? So for example, prospecting, cold calling, emailing, social selling, making sure that you've got enough time throughout your day to do those things is very important. And we'll be talking about time blocking in another slide later in the session as well. But time blocking in your calendar, again, can be very helpful. It's a visual reminder. It's also a little alarm reminder of what you should be doing. But it's not enough to just time block it in your calendar. You actually need to stick to it. So many people don't respect their time blocks. And that's not driving your own accountability, but it's also not actually benefiting you. Within your time blocks, there are certain activities that are going to require more brain power and more attention as well from you. You should consider potentially removing distractions, putting your phone away, putting Slack notifications off during that time so that you can make the most of the time that you've blocked for that task. The next thing to consider is streamlining repeatable tasks. There are tasks that we do every single day or every single week. Finding the most efficient ways of completing them will allow you to save time. For example, again, if you're an SDR and you've got weekly catch-ups with your AE, or every time you book a meeting, you need to pass on some information, you might want to have a template with certain pointers of information that you're going to give to them, so that then you just go in and fill it out rather than every single time starting it from scratch. The same thing with trigger templates. For any of you that were at the masterclass that Brian Mulry did a couple of weeks ago, he talked about trigger templates, the importance of them, and how they can help with automation while still being tailored and personalized. If you haven't watched it, I definitely recommend that you do. But all of these things allow you to streamline those repeatable tasks and essentially save time. Because one thing you'll all notice, regardless of your role in sales, is that there's never enough hours in the day to get it all done, right? And either you run the day or the day runs you. So being aware of where you're spending your time and how you can streamline, how you can make things faster and work for you, then the more time you'll be saving. Batch your non-essential tasks, and in particular, batch the tasks that are similar in nature, right? So if you're going to be, for example, responding to LinkedIn messages, you might not want to respond to a message as soon as it comes in. You might want to make a note on your notebook that you've got a message to respond to, and throughout the day, add any other messages that you want to respond to, and then have an allocated section to respond to all of them. That will essentially save you more time than going from LinkedIn, responding to a message, to then going back to HubSpot and doing something else, then checking your emails and doing something else. The same with emails. If you allocate a half an hour window to go through your emails and respond to all of the important ones, you're potentially going to get more work done than if you're jumping at an email every time it comes in, which is distracting you from whatever you were doing at that moment. Create and follow a process. And again, this needs to work for you. You know what kind of things and what kind of activities you're needing to complete every single day, right? So creating and following a process that works for you, again, will allow you to save time and be more efficient. And this might even come down to the way you're prospecting. How are you doing your research? How long are you spending doing your research? Another thing that can be super useful is to write down your top 3 priorities each day. And this can be done in a variety of different ways. You can spend some time at the beginning of every day planning out your day. What are your priorities and where are you going to find the time to do it? But you might also write it down the day before. And so you start the day hitting the ground running, knowing what your priorities for that day are, already having made the time for it in your calendar, etc. The problem with not having priorities is that we all have to-do lists, and those to-do lists just keep getting fuller and fuller and fuller, right? And in sales, there's always things to be done. So if you're not looking at your own priorities and the things that are going to move the needle further, depending on what you need to do in order to achieve results, then you're potentially going to spend a lot of time in areas that are not going to generate those results for you. Another thing that is extremely valuable, and it comes down to self-awareness as well, is understanding your own most productive hours, knowing your limits, knowing your energy, and understanding what ways do you go through in the day. Different people have different energy levels. Some people are morning people, where from 8 o'clock they've got all of the energy and they're ready to be on the phones at 9 o'clock. While some people might have to wait until 11 o'clock to be on the phones because they've got more energy, and that's going to affect their tone, their behavior, and how they put themselves forward, how they have conversations, etc. If you're someone that's a morning person, likewise, in the afternoon around 4 or 5, you might start becoming tired. Your tone might be affected by that, and it might not be the most accurate time for you to be calling. But if it's the time that is generating the most results for you, then at least you can plan it into your day and prep to save your energy for that moment. In order to understand those waves, that you need to know yourself, you need to gather some data, look at when you're your most productive, which days of the week even are your most productive, etc. And then plan ahead when possible. It's not always possible, right? Things do spring up out of nowhere and you've got to get on with them. But when you can plan ahead, it will really save you time. It will allow you to focus on what matters and spend time in the right places to get the right results as well. I remember when I started my career in sales, someone said to me, fail to plan, plan to fail. And it's something I've stuck to the point where, and you might even laugh at me for doing this, but yesterday I sent myself a meeting invite with a Google Meet to run through this presentation to myself, record it and watch it back so I could give myself feedback. And again, that's like to be able to spot those areas of improvement, to look at the delivery, etc. But it's preparing to be able to deliver it in the best way moving forward. So I definitely recommend all of you to practice if you're going to be delivering presentations, but also if you're going to be calling to do some role plays with your colleagues, etc. It really does help to prep, feel more confident, and feel better about what you're doing. Any questions around this before I move forward?
I'm going to check the chat for you.
Thank you. I'm going to assume that there isn't for now, and I'm going to continue with the Pomodoro technique. And I guess a question for all of you is, does anyone know the Pomodoro technique? Do you use it? And for those of you that don't know, don't worry, you will by the end of this masterclass.
Are you going to tell us who Pomodoro is?
I actually don't know who Pomodoro is, but this is something I learned back in 2017 from YouTube videos, but I'll come back to you on that. I'll take it away as a question and put it on the circle. But I'm going to tell you how to actually use it, how to use the technique. So this method is essentially for staying focused and mentally fresh. And it really does help, not just with your professional life, it can help with your personal life as well. And I'll tell you some examples at the end of it. But the first step is to pick a task. The second step is to set a 25-minute timer. Some people might find their 15-minute timer works better for them if they've got a shorter attention span. But generally speaking, 25 minutes is a good amount of time to get an activity done, or at least started far enough. The next step is obviously to work on your task until the time is up. And then it's important to take a 5-minute break as well. What you should do after that is repeat the steps to continue creating Pomodoros. The Pomodoro is that 25-minute timer block, essentially. Every four Pomodoros, you can take a longer 15 to 30-minute break. What this does generally is once you've started the task and you've set the timer and you've committed to it and you've put your full focus into it, oftentimes you'll realize that you can get a lot more done in that 25 minutes than you'll realize initially when you're putting off the task. B, you'll also realize that actually you're far enough in the task that you've got some direction and you know how to continue it. So you just want to continue until you finish if you're far enough. Or you can set another Pomodoro to have another 25 minutes and get it done. But this really helps you to focus on the task at hand, knowing that you've got a timer. And this actually really helps with those tasks that we said we could batch. You can write them down as batch tasks, set a timer, and get them out of the way. I do this in my personal life with things such as chores. So, for example, every day I'll have a 15-minute timer where I just do a pickup around the house, everything that's out of place, and you'll be surprised how much you can actually achieve within that 15-minute slot. Or again, I'll do it with things like the kitchen, and then you get as many tasks done within that time. You realize actually dishwasher only takes 2 minutes, counters only take 2 minutes, doing that only takes 2 minutes. But when you're putting it in front of you as something that needs to get done, it often builds up and you often don't want to do it. So you give yourself reasons not to. And that's with pretty much everything that we do at work as well, right? The more we give ourselves reasons not to do something, the harder it's going to be to do it. The more that we set a step to take a task, a timer, the more we're able to accomplish it. Next thing I want to talk about is the 4 Ps of time management. You may have...
Sorry to interrupt, Sonia. There seems to be an understanding that it's coming from Vitali. He can butt in if he's on the line, actually, that it means tomato in Italian. And Tim's come in, it's the name of the tomato timer. Someone's talking about Pomodoro sauce. So it's obviously related to something Italian. There you go.
Okay, so maybe it's the time it takes to like make a good pizza, or like the time it takes to make a good pasta or something, and that's where they've taken it from. I'm not quite sure if someone can find that out, but maybe after the talk, I'll do some research as well.
There you go, good stuff.
Nice. So as I was saying, we're going to be talking about the 4 Ps of time management. And those 4 Ps are prioritization, productivity, planning, and positivity. You probably noticed by now that all of these 4 Ps have elements that we've just discussed in the time management tips. And some of them we will cover again because they are extremely important and they do really help. So when it comes to prioritization, hard word to say, prioritize your tasks by importance and think about what tasks can move the needle further, right? There's always going to be certain tasks that are going to help you get to your results and to your goals further than others. Although there are tasks that always need to be done, such as admin. Get the challenging tasks out of the way first. Doing it will give you a sense of achievement and will allow for any other task on your to-do list to kind of just flow by and be a lot easier to achieve. I will also say get your challenging tasks out the way in the morning, because you'll then have that sense of achievement before lunch, and you'll have a much more positive afternoon than if the morning was sluggish and unproductive and you put things off. Prioritize your accounts and your buyer personas, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in today's session as well. When it comes to planning, I've mentioned this, but plan ahead of time whenever you can. Keep to-do lists. Nobody can remember every single thing that needs doing, especially in sales, especially when you're having conversations with loads of different people, when you're following up on different opportunities, different deals, etc. So keep to-do lists. One thing that really helps me, and again, I thought I'd share, is I've got my normal notebook where I'll be writing down notes, etc. But then I've also got a time management notebook. And the way this works, you can find them quite easily on Amazon, is they've got a timetable for your day with all of the hours. I think it's blurred, but you'll have to believe me on that. It's got a timetable here with all of the hours of the day. Then it's got an important list, and this is where I would write my top 3 goals for that day. And then it's got a to-do list as well with okay, delay and cancel. So I can look at what's more important, what can be moved, what can be delegated, etc. And then it's got a memo section at the bottom, and this is what I'll use for any follow-ups, any LinkedIn messages, any people that I need to call back, anyone that's just come back from holiday, etc., etc. And obviously keep track of your hot leads and follow-ups, because those are potentially the ones that are going to get you to your numbers at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, when you're looking for those last opportunities to get through. When it comes to productivity, understand your energy levels and hours. I've mentioned this, but I can't stress how much of a difference it made to my own productivity to understand which hours of the day I was the most productive and which ones I wasn't. And let's face it, nobody is productive every single hour of every single day. We all need rest. Split big tasks into smaller chunks and batch when possible. Whenever we've got big tasks, they might seem overwhelming, but by splitting them into smaller chunks, into smaller tasks, it makes it more achievable. It makes it so that we can measure our progress as well. And it makes it so that we're getting somewhere rather than just looking at a big mountain and not really knowing how to climb it. And automate when you can, as an example, using trigger templates for your emails. Positivity is another one of the important P's, because mindset genuinely is everything. If you tell yourself you don't want to do something, you're going to find it so much harder to do it than if you tell yourself you're excited about something. I find public speaking quite nerve-wracking. And one thing that I do to reframe my mindset is I look at it as exciting. And you know what? I'm very excited to be here right now. But how we look at it changes our own mindset for it too. Having a can-do and positive attitude also helps you achieve more. If you tell yourself, I can do this and I will find a way to get this thing done, you're going to feel so much better than if you're telling yourself, I can't do this, I'm never going to get this done. And your action is going to be influenced by that too. And reflect on what you have learned. Reflect on conversations that you've had. Reflect on what's got you the best results, what's moved the needle further. Which type of industries, which sectors are you getting the best results? Because all of this will allow you to continue prioritizing, but also knowing which tasks to do more of, etc., etc. Any questions around the 4 P's of time management? And if there isn't, I do have a question for all of you. Is there any additional time management tips that you've got or that you want to share?
Stick it in the comments if you have any questions, but likely also this is all about sharing. Sharing's caring. So if you've got any thoughts on your own time management tips, it doesn't matter what level you are as a VP of sales or someone early in your career, any additional time management tips, share in the comments. And then you can move on to the next one, Sonia, and I'll pick them up as they go. There is a slight delay.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. James, do you have any time management tips that you want to share? Because you're a very busy man, loads of different things going on at all times.
I guess 2 or 3 things. I tend to turn off all notifications on all apps. I don't have any notifications on whatsoever, but I obsessively check them all. I have no notifications. Two, I do use color blocking and time blocking. So I block out everything I do, travel, what hotel I'm staying in, my gym sessions, my getting ready time, everything's blocked out. Um, and also, I delegate. I've got a team to do that, but I delegate as much as I can. Comments coming in. Ali's saying that she needs some help in this department, so this has been super useful. Tim's saying that he sets a goal for each hour with a tick or a cross for each goal for the day to get more ticks and crosses. I love that, actually. That's a very cool technique. Luke is saying eat the frog, start with the worst task for the day. Another good technique. Josh is the guru. Color blocking is 100% worth it.
Yeah.
Tamia writes high priority emails, but my boss calls me in the middle of it all the times regarding clients or some questions about active deals, setting them some small tasks, etc. Do I ignore them or add them to a to-do later? How would you manage this? So I'm going to repeat that question. If I'm writing high priority emails, but my boss calls me into the middle of while she's doing it multiple times regarding clients or some other questions she has about active deals, does she just ignore them or add them to do later?
Okay, I think it's a very good question, and I think it comes down to set an expectation. And again, this is something I learned early on in my sales career. It was asking how important is this, or how urgent is this, and when do you need it by? But also being able to set the expectation of right now I'm doing this. You can message me, and I'll get back to you in an hour, 2 hours time. Just because as well, when people ring you once and you answer, they take expectation that you're going to prioritize them, right? So that means that you're also messages on an hour. Well, if you say to someone, hey, I'm in the middle of doing emails, send me the messages on Slack and I'll have a look in an hour, then at least you've set the expectation of when you'll be able to even look at their messages. And then you can ask the questions of, how urgent, how important is this, when do you need it by, in order to understand when to fit it in. Because one thing I realized is that whenever I would get a request, I would feel like it was urgent straight away, like it needed to be done right now. And then once I started asking that question of when do you need it by, some people would be like, oh, I need it by next week, or I need it by Friday, or I need it in like 5 days time. And obviously that allows you to prioritize as well, because if you've got your own client calls, your own demos, etc., you might want to prioritize those and be able to say, okay, yes, I will be able to do it by this date, or no, actually, I can't get it done by this date because of X, Y, and Z. But setting expectations, I find, is always the best policy for yourself. And
Just one final recommendation. Josh has basically said there's a book called Getting Things Done, literally GTD, and implementing some kind of productivity system can be as simple as what you need. Lots of good feedback on this session, so thank you, Sonia.
you're very welcome. I'm glad that you're all enjoying it. If there is no more additional tips, we'll keep going with prioritization. And as Yoda says, prioritize you must. And if there's any other Star Wars fans out there, hi. So one thing that we mentioned within time management, but that also relates onto prioritization, is time blocking your calendars. And you can do this by colors. It really does help, especially if you're a visual person, but you don't necessarily have to. The main thing to think about when it comes to time blocking your calendar is making it work for you. As I mentioned earlier, there is no point in time blocking your calendar if you're not going to stick to it. It's just going to annoy you, it's going to make it full, and it's potentially going to make it overwhelming. But if you have a system that works for you and a reason for having those time blocks and a process for actually getting your tasks done, then it can actually be super helpful. And quite honestly, if it wasn't for time blocking and color blocking within my calendar, I would not be able to organize all the different projects and things that I'm working on. So I think that is something that really helps me. But I've had feedback from other people that, if they don't respect it, it doesn't actually help. So what are some of the benefits of time blocking? First of all, it ensures that you've got time to make your priorities, right? To fit in those priorities that are going to get you further onto those results. It also allows you to spend time in the right places. Generally, focused efforts will generate better results. If you're spending your time in the wrong places with the wrong accounts, sending the wrong messages, you're potentially not going to be generating those results, right? But if you have a targeted approach, you understand your ICP, your buyer personas, you've got the right messaging, and you've got the time allocated in your diary to get those tasks done, then you're potentially going to generate better results. Or at least be able to have better conversations with your manager if those results are not coming in because you're still following up with process that's good. Create a routine that works for you and build good habits. How often do we not realize that some of the habits that we think are good are not so good for us and might be damaging us and our processes? So look at your habits, look at what you're doing on a week-to-day basis, on a day-to-day basis, where you're spending your time, where you could be saving some time, where maybe you're procrastinating or not doing things that could generate those results for you, and make little changes. For any of you that have read Atomic Habits, and I do have some podcast and book recommendations at the end of this session, but for those of you that have read it, it very quickly becomes obvious that just by looking to improve 1% each day, there is amazing compound results. While if we look to not be 1% better, we look to be 1% worse, or don't change things, then the negative compound is actually really detrimental as well. The last thing I would say about time blocking is that it drives accountability and self-discipline. It very much is up to you to stick to your time blocks and get the work done. I'll very quickly say that if I was an SDR right now, this is how I would structure my days based on my own energy levels, based on the activities that I would need to get done. And obviously we all have internal, external meetings that we need to plan around, but understand how much of your week is going towards that. Is it more than 1 hour per day? Is it more than 2 hours per day? If it's more than 2 hours per day, I would really look at what those meetings are and how you can potentially reduce them, or make them bi-weekly, etc. Because the activities that are going to get you further are prospecting, calling, social, emailing, and you need to make sure to fit those in. And then there are some other things like admin that just need to be done. But if you're prepping for your day ahead, or even the evening of the day before, then you're going to have a much more successful day than if you come in, you stroll in, have a half an hour coffee with your colleagues, then sit down, think, oh, you know what, I'm going to do some emails. Oh, I'm now going to do that one call that I've got pending, because that's not really a process. That's just winging it, and it's potentially harming you. We're going to talk about the Eisenhower decision matrix. And James, before you ask, I have no idea who Eisenhower is. The only Eisenhower that I know is from Breaking Bad, and I'm pretty sure that he didn't invent this. But the Eisenhower decision matrix is also known as the important urgent matrix, or the decision-making matrix. And essentially, it's here to help you understand and categorize your own tasks by matter of importance and urgency. So if we look at the first box, that's for important and urgent, then goes on to important but not urgent. And then if we look at the bottom quadrant, it says not important, urgent, and not important, not urgent, right? So the idea behind this is that whenever we have a task, we should be able to place it into one of these boxes. If it falls under important and urgent, for example, we have a demo this afternoon at 3 o'clock that we need to prep for, that might be something that you need to do now, right? There's some urgency to it, it's important, you need to make sure that it's prepped. If we're looking at something that's important, but maybe not so urgent, maybe our boss wants us to provide them with a report on last quarter's numbers and they need it by Friday, right? What we need to do in this case is schedule a time to do it, find a time within our calendar, within our diary that would be suitable so that we hand it in on time, but also that fits within other priorities that we might have. We then might have not important, but urgent, right? Usually within these tasks, someone else can do it for us, or we can find someone else to do it with us. Quote that comes to mind is, a job shared is a job halved. So if you've got something that's not important, but it's quite urgent that needs to be done, look at whether someone else can do it or someone can help you do it faster. And then if you have any tasks that fall under not important and not urgent, think about why they're on your to-do list to begin with. In most cases, they can be deleted or eliminated. There might be some cases where they actually need to be done, but in that case, they might fall more under not important, urgent than not important, not urgent. Does the Eisenhower decision matrix make sense to everybody? Had anyone heard of it before or applied it before?
There's a lot of comments on this. I don't know if this is courtesy to Chat GPT or yeah, I'm just reading the comments here. Ex-president of the USA, Eisenhower matrix, named after President Eisenhower, though he wasn't the one who created the matrix.
Someone that looked up to him. Well, there we go. We've got a history lesson in the process as well. Oftentimes, like these kind of matrices or this kind of frameworks, they either have the name of the person that made it or the person of someone that they looked up to that helped them come up with that decision. But does anyone use this at all?
There's people that have seen it before. Most have seen it, but not maybe as effectively as they should. It's a good reminder.
Right, thank you. I don't tend to have the grid like anywhere, but I do tend to think now a lot more about, okay, how important is this? How urgent is it? To be able to categorize it. So the last thing, let me double check time. Yep, we're on time. But the last thing that we're going to be covering today is prioritizing your accounts and buyer personas. I've talked about prioritization and how important it is to get to get your prioritizing done correctly. It genuinely is the single most important thing that you can get done right in sales. And it is something that you will be constantly having to work on and keep on top of. But focusing your efforts on the right accounts, the right people at the right time with the right message will generate the right results more often than not. So there are a couple of things that we can do to prioritize our buyer personas, but also our accounts. The first thing is to utilize a prioritization matrix. Has anyone ever seen a prioritization matrix before or used one? Essentially is a traffic light system of green, amber, and red for the people that we're looking to reach out. So these metrics may not make much sense right now, but essentially it's different departments and the different people that you might be able to reach out within those, right? So if we were to look at, for example, just a sales function, our green people might be at the top, like the VPs of sales development, the directors of sales development, even like depending on the company, depending on the size and depending on the number of employees, that will depend because you will have more people as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But generally, you'll have a number of people that will be your key decision makers, right? You'll then have a bunch of people that often will report onto the key decision makers. That will be your ambers. They're people that can give you good information. They can potentially be your champions and your influencers, but they're not going to be the ones making the decision ultimately. And then you've got the red ones. And the red ones are people from whom you can get more information, you can understand processes, but they're not necessarily going to be influencers or champions, and they're definitely not decision makers. So you usually want to reach out to the green ones first. You also want to personalize with the green ones a lot more and spend more time because they're going to be your decision makers, the ones that can move the needle further. But all of these are important. However, you don't want to spend too much time with the red ones, and you don't want to personalize too much, because they're not going to get you the results that you're looking for. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at your buyer personas, when you're looking at your accounts, like which ones are the ones that you should be going after and spending the most amount of time, and where can you potentially automate a little bit more. You should also be able to prioritize your accounts by levels of priority or by size, depending on what is it that you're going after, right? You might have tier 1 or level 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. And then you understand as well which accounts to go after in order to reach your results, right? If you have a 200K target and your green accounts and your level 1 accounts are generally around a 50K average deal value, you know that you need 4 of those. But if then your ambers are more like 25K, then you're going to need double of those, right? And it allows you to know where to spend your time. Because bad prioritization leads to time being spent in the wrong places, which doesn't generate results, but also leads to frustration, time wasted, and ultimately is one of the reasons that people fail in sales development. So this is just showcasing the importance of spending your time in the right places. And obviously, in order to spend your time in the right places, you need to take a step further and really understand your ICP. Which accounts are you going after? Who is your ideal customer profile and why? And who are your buyer personas within that ICP that you need to be speaking to? If you haven't identified those, then it's going to be very hard for you to know where to spend your time in order to generate the best results. So again, I'll open up to the floor for any additional prioritization tips that you might have, that you might use in your day-to-day. Anything else?
I've always used the ABC because I'm a simple guy. So A for top 20%, B for second 20%, and then the remaining C accounts. But I do like the color coding. I think it's good and visual. And a few people are asking if you can share the slides in Circle afterwards. So what we'll do is we'll share the recording, and I'm sure people will want to share this with their teams. At some point, we want to get your teams in the Circle, people. But Sonia, do you want to summarize or wrap up now this session?
Yeah, I will. So the last thing I will say is we've got some additional resources here. Some of you mentioned Eat That Frog. I mentioned Atomic Habits. There's some podcasts in there that Make It Happen Mondays and the Impact Theory podcast that might be quite useful to get some additional tips. And if there is any questions, please do fire them away. Obviously, I am a member of the membership as well, so you should all be able to reach me quite easily. If you want to have a further chat about this, I am available, and I hope that you all got loads of value out of it and that you learned something new.
Fantastic. So let's see if there's any questions that come in. I mean, what I love about these subjects that you've covered today is that they're universal. Doesn't matter what stage you're in your career. So this was really well thought out, and agreed that there's a lot of value in it. I'm just looking at. Can you see the comments now? You're back in the room.
Oh, there's the 80-20 rule I've heard of too, Kevin mentions, and that's absolutely right, is doing 20% of activities that will generate 80% of your results, and finding those key activities in order to generate the most amount of results from them.
I mean, I have to say, I mean, this has been one of the most interactive commenting, and you've sat on these as well, Sonia, so you've seen that we don't always get this level of interaction, so that's good. So thanks for putting your effort into this. Are there any final questions for Sonia before we wrap up, and she has to prep for our next talk this afternoon?
Which, on that note, if you haven't registered, this is your final chance to go ahead and register.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to stick a link in. It is specific. This afternoon's event is it's mainly for, it's aimed at BDR leaders, but it's for any manager really.
I think Tim says, if you are training your staff with this, how much would you be setting the process, and how much would you give staff the opportunity to create their own? It's a good question. I think it very much depends on the size of your team, on the experience of your team, how long they've been in seat, etc. If you've got a very brand new team, it's good to set frameworks and guidelines for them. But if you've got a more experienced team that already knows what's working for them, etc., it's better to kind of give them guidelines, but let them find what works for them. I think it's probably a mix of the two, having a framework and having a set of activities that everyone needs to be doing and a set of tasks that they need to complete, but then giving them the freedom to find what times of the day work best for them, while also having potentially some team activities that you can all do at the same time, etc. I think that's it in terms of questions. Oh, you're on mute, James.
I wasn't going to share this, but while you were talking, I opened up my sparkling water and it exploded everywhere in the airport. So I was attentively watching while cleaning up my sparkling water. Nigel's registered for this afternoon. That's really cool. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Ali. Thanks, everybody that joined us this afternoon. Look out for the next dinner invite in April. I want to get it out early. So that's going to be for individual contributors and the leaders. So look out for the April invite. And then we've got a bunch of other activities and masterclasses that are coming over the next few weeks that we hope will be valuable. Remember, Sonia and I are working on the masterclasses around focusing on leadership, then IC, then leadership, then IC. There is a bit of a flow to these that we're working through. And if you've got suggestions of something you've not yet seen from us, just DM us on Circle and we can put it into the feedback loop. But that's awesome. Thank you very much. Speak to you all soon.
Thanks all. Have a great week.